it's so recent in most of our memories, the events on which it's based. The events of 9/11, the particular individuals who were involved, the photographs that came out of that, like the falling man. And I think it's a very brave attempt to give a voice to one of those individuals who was up in the Twin Towers on that day.
Also, it's a dramatic monologue as well, and it explains what this man was going through, the pain. It gives this individual a voice, and we're able to get an idea of what he was facing and the feelings that he was going through. Maybe Armitage is not giving us a true reflection of actually what it was like for the masses, but it's hints at how maybe some people are feeling at that particular time.
I think it's interesting that he's taken that approach with it, because actually as you read through it, it's absent of any sort of political message. There's no reference to the actual bombers, the bombing, or any sort of politics around it. It remains totally focused on this one individual and his experience. I think that's an interesting choice when thinking about the message. He's sort of asking us just to refer to the people that were there without making any other judgments.
I mean, it was written to commemorate them, and it was written as an elegy to sort of express the sorrow and the sadness. And it does, as you said, give them a voice. And I think it focuses on the human side of the story rather than the political.
Definitely.
The first thing that struck me about the language is that it is very sparse. It doesn't use a lot of complex sentences or difficult language because it reflects a man's thoughts at that particular time, and I think it's designed to be simple and hard-hitting and have an immediate impact on the reader.
I totally agree with the point you've made, Mandy. Also, in the first stanza, the poet has used the second person pronoun you. It's to engage us as a reader with what's going on, so we are able to empathise with the feelings of this individual and how they were feeling, and also he wants to get our undivided attention as well of how he's feeling. So it's like he's having a conversation with us.
It's almost, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, does that not also sort of emphasise our helplessness? He repeats, you are watching, like we're watching it on TV. You know, we can't help. So by directing it as us, are we put in that position of helplessness as well?
Yeah, and also it's as if we're meant to be doing something rather than being passive, where he's actively trying to get our attention. Maybe he's criticising possibly these people that are watching the television absently without relating to with the situation, what's going on, and the fear that he's feeling that is in this building that he cannot escape.
I feel like he's talking to one person. I always feel when I read this that the you is singular, and that makes it feel like more of a personal challenge, you know, as if he's addressing it to the reader.
I don't know, I think it changes. I think it starts off as if he's speaking to everybody that's watching it, you know, on the ground, on the TV, and he uses these domestic images of shaking crumbs or pegging out washing. And I don't think it's until the end that I feel that it changes to something personal, because he says, do you see me, my love? There's a change from asking for help to actually saying goodbye.
Yeah, and it's more personal then.
Yeah.
It's as if these are going to be his last words to someone that he loves and he cares about. Where before he was talking to the masses, possibly, and then it's only one individual that he's focused on.
I think it depends on how you read it, doesn't it? And how hard it hits you personally. I mean, I think another aspect of language is the use of the present participles, because they're used throughout the poem, and I think they give a sense of urgency and a sense that it's happening now. And they're also used to emphasise the movements around line 20, windmilling, wheeling, spiralling, falling. They give a real sense of movement to the poem.
Also as well suggests his desperation, where twirling, turning, where he's trying to wave his shirt to get someone to notice him, and throughout you see that desperation until right at the very end, where one word on his song, where it's flagging, shows that he's exhausted, and therefore his life is slowly ebbing away.
Well, there's no control in the movement words earlier on. Windmilling, wheeling, it's all out of control, it's out of his control, and then by the end of the poem, he takes control in some ways, because he makes the only choice that's left to him. He can decide whether to let the flames kill him, or whether he, ends it the way he chooses. So that's the one choice he has left. So it sounds like that's the choice he's made at the end.
I think as well, he moves from, like you said, that desperation increases, and he mentions the choice earlier on, doesn't he? He says, I'm not at the point of leaving, diving. And diving is almost this sort of very casual word that we associate with leisure and fun. And it links to, there's lots of references, rather than to height, to depth. So he says, the depth is appalling, appalling. He starts to think of it almost, we see it from his perspective, like he's going to fall downwards.
We see it from the bottom, it'll be seen as a great height.
He says, he mentions here in the gills, there's lots of imagery associated with water.
I suppose you could link that in the point with believing. Maybe he's shocked that this building is on fire, and also maybe to make us feel shocked as well, because the depth that he's going to fall is going to be something that will kill him if he does jump through the window. So therefore there's a sense of feeling great sorrow for this particular person that cannot escape.
There's also a sense that he's clinging on to life. He has got to face this decision, and death is inevitable, whichever way it comes, but he's clinging on to life. Waving, trying to attract attention, trying, and the end of the penultimate stanza, I am still breathing. There's this sense that he's clinging on to it, and then by the last stanza, he's tiring, he's numb, he's sagging, he's failing.
The main thing to say about structure in Out of the Blue is the repetition throughout it. We see, mainly the repetition of the single verbs next to each other, like waving, watching, and so on. But also that pattern of repetition of the verbs, the two verbs at the end of each sentence. Again, like we were saying before, it's almost like an echo.
Yeah.
So, I suppose you could take that in two ways, almost like his voice being lost and him desperately trying to get it across, or even linking it to Simon Armitage's purpose, which is this is a commemorative poem. He's trying to get their voices to echo back to us after this time.
To reverberate after the event.
Exactly.
I think when you first glance at the poem, the first thing that a lot of people say is that it's regular verses, full-line stanzas, but it's free verse, it's very irregular. There's that lack of control, which I think reflects the fact that things are out of his control.
Also as well, to add to that point, he uses a lot of the first person pronoun, I am, again, that echo in his voice, the desperation of being in a particular situation, that he's very vulnerable to, and therefore this is his way of expressing himself, because there's no other way of being able to voice how he feels, because no one else is listening to him, only the people that basically he's trying to make some kind of communication with by waving his shirt. And
I think, the I am as well really emphasises, the strength of his identity. We don't know his name. He could be one of many, many people who died, but the I am emphasises that he is still there, he is still alive, and that's what he wants people on the ground to recognise.
Also links to that final statement, do you see me, my love? I think it's not until he says my love that we suddenly start to think this is a person with a family, with a family that is a real person, and all those statements before, I am, almost fail until that point.
It could also link with the second stanza, does anyone see a soul worth saving? It's like challenging the reader as well, that he is an individual, that he is worth saving, but however, no one's going to come to his aid.
That's why I have to keep on reiterating it and saying it.
I found it quite difficult when I first read this poem because the events of 9/11 are so recent, and I was quite wary of somebody taking it on themselves to speak for one of the victims. But I feel that he has had some success in this. I feel that you can empathise, and I know that a lot of pupils I've taught have found that it does help you to empathise with the individuals and imagine what it was actually like to be in that building rather than just watching it on the television from a great distance.
I think that's it. Obviously for our pupils it's not something they'll remember that well. They'll be very familiar with the images of it, but perhaps they won't remember the day that it happened like we do. And I think it's I actually think it's quite successful in portraying the images of it. I don't know. I'm in agreement with you, Amanda, as well. It's a big task to take on, isn't it? And I do think in a lot of ways it's been successful. And I actually feel quite emotional when I read the poem, and I think it gives a lot more meaning and empathy to those images, because I imagine when pupils watch them, it's almost so unrealistic. It's like it's a film now. That's how it exists.
To me, this poem has a clear sense of sadness for all those millions that died, and basically what they went through as well, and the families went through, and clearly it still is occurring, the pain of what happened, and therefore you can only empathise with this situation that this fictitious person was going through. And when I've taught this with pupils, they've realised this emotional thread that runs through the poem, and the pain that this particular person is going through at this moment in time. I
can remember seeing the images and thinking, people actually throwing themselves out the window and thinking, what must it feel like to be in that position? How far must they have been pushed to actually have made that choice? And I think to a limited extent this poem helps you to sort of think about that in more detail and imagine what it was actually like being put in that position, although we could never fully imagine it.
I think it does help to sort of contextualise those images more, and add that sort of more empathetic emotional sense that's removed from newspapers and things that we're used to seeing like that. It's not journalistic, is it? Its focus is emotion.
Yeah. It's a very visual poem as well, with all the movement that's going throughout the poem, and you can visualise these particular images. I think the poem Out of the Blue, because it clearly was a terrorist attack, the 9/11, with the poem The Right Word, where in The Right Word the perpetrators are listed, and it questions a particular name for these people, and it questions our views whether we should be labelling people. However, in Out of the Blue it shows the actual actions and what these terrorists can cause. The consequences of conflict.
Also sort of ties in with Belfast confetti in a couple of ways. That obviously Belfast confetti refers to the Troubles in Ireland, so there's that, I guess, the link of terrorism and explosions is what Belfast confetti is about, but also they both deal with somebody's personal experience of the after effect. Yeah, exactly.
And being right in the thick of it, being involved in it.
So both, in this sense as well, a dramatic monologue, because it's one person speaking about the trauma that they're going through, trying to escape the bombardment of things being thrown at them.
And obviously all the poems in this cluster deal with death, but I just feel that Out of the Blue links with one or two of the others in the sense that the main character is moving towards death and has no choice in the matter. So you've got Mamet's Wood, where they're marching towards death. You've got Charge of the Light Brigade, where they don't have any choice and they're riding into their death. And Bayonet Charge as well, so you've still got this idea. And it is still in a war setting of sorts, the terrorist war against terrorism. And this man doesn't have a choice about moving towards his death. The only thing he has a choice about is how he actually ends it.
I think if I was going to compare it to something that sort of seemed like an elegy as well, the one on Tuesday would be Falling Leaves. I think it would be quite nice. You could contrast, compare and contrast some of the verbs used as well, and that sort of idea of movement and why they're choosing those for different effects. Obviously, it's quite a horrific effect in Out of the Blue. In Falling Leaves, it's very much more gentle and peaceful.